Before Monday Nitro? Before the NWO? Before Eric Bischoff was turning up in leather jackets and blowing Vince McMahon's mind? Australia had its own World Championship Wrestling, and it wasn't some polished, PG-rated, pyro-heavy TV product. It was brutal, beer-soaked, blood-drenched mayhem. This is the insane true story of WCW Australia, and why it deserves a spot in wrestling history's Hall of Chaos. It all kicked off in 1964, when a shrewd, flamboyant American promoter named Jim Barnett arrived down under. Now, Barnett wasn't new to wrestling. He'd already made his mark in the US territories, but saw untapped potential in Australia. And mate, he wasn't wrong. Back then, the wrestling scene was mostly small-time promotions and local circuits. But Barnett had a plan. Bring in the best American stars, mix them with charismatic Aussies, get it on primetime TV, and let the chaos unfold. He partnered with Nine Network, getting WCW Australia on every household's telly. And by the late 60s, wrestling was one of the biggest TV draws in the country. Over 1 million viewers a week in a country of just over 11 million people. Think about that ratio for a second. It was basically like if MasterChef and Origin ratings combined, but with more suplexes and pensioners hurling abuse from the front row. Every wrestling boom needs its heroes, and WCW Australia had some absolute icons. Mario Milano, an Italian-born grappler who became one of the most beloved faces in Aussie wrestling history. He wasn't just a pretty face. Bloke had charisma for days and wasn't afraid to bleed buckets for the fans. Then you had Spiros Arion, the Golden Greek, a powerhouse who was both a heartthrob and a savage when needed. And local Aussie heroes like Ron Miller and Larry O'D, rough and tumble blokes who looked like they could sink a slab before breakfast and still go 60 minutes in the ring. But it wasn't just the good guys. The villains in WCW Australia were next-level scumbags. Killer Kowalski, a sadistic, towering monster with a legit reputation for hurting people. Brute Bernard and Skull Murphy, two unhinged American brawlers who'd spit at the crowd, bash babyfaces, and needed armed cops to walk them to their cars after shows. The Sheik, one of wrestling's original madmen, would throw fireballs, fight, stab people with pencils. Fans legit thought he was possessed. You think modern wrestling gets hardcore? You haven't seen anything. Spiros Arion versus Killer Kowalski in 1967 was so bloody it made front-page news. And I'm not talking kayfabe news, actual newspapers. One match at Sydney Stadium in '71 between Mario Milano and the Sheik ended in a near riot when Sheik fireballed Mario on live TV. Security couldn't hold back the mob. Old ladies were swinging handbags, dads jumping barricades. A dude threw a F* in Barstool. And here's the best part. The Nine Network reran it twice the next week. Instant ratings spike. Then there's the story of Brute Bernard wrestling with a busted head so bad, blood was pouring into his eyes. He headbutted a bloke clean off the apron, wiped his own blood across his chest and cackled. The crowd lost their minds. At Festival Hall in Melbourne, cops were routinely stationed ringside, not for show, because riots were almost guaranteed. In 1973, Barnett pulled off a masterstroke. The World Cup of Wrestling, teams from Australia, America, Japan, and Europe. Now keep in mind, this was pre-80s globalization. Japanese wrestlers rarely left Japan. Americans rarely ventured this far south. It was the first time Aussie fans saw Antonio Inoki, Giant Baba, and Jean Ferret, better known as Andre the Giant. Andre was a freak of nature. 7'4", 200 plus kilos, and so big he allegedly drank an entire case of Two Haze New before a match. Fans were awestruck, babies were terrified, and crowds came in droves. Sadly, by the mid-70s, TV execs started getting squeamish about the blood and violence. Barnett bailed back to the States in 1974, taking his American talent connections with him. Without Barnett, the Nine Network pulled the plug in 1978. Festival Hall fell silent, and Aussie wrestling's golden era quietly faded away. But its legacy, still here. PWA, MCW, EPW, They all owe a debt to those mad bastards throwing fireballs and fists in the 60s and 70s. Mario Milano wrestled into the early 80s and became a legit Aussie icon. Jim Barnett went on to be a key power broker in WCW America in the 80s. Andre the Giant became, well, Andre. Festival Hall became a rock venue but still occasionally hosts fights and indie shows. So that's the forgotten, blood-soaked, chair-throwing history of WCW Australia. If you want to see more stories like this, the insane, the violent, the beautifully stupid side of wrestling history, you know what to do. Smash that like button. Sub to the channel. Drop a comment with your favorite old-school Aussie wrestling memory and let's keep the history alive.